Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we share the stories and lessons of hands-on professional and business leaders shaping industry through skill, vision, and resilience. My guest today is Errol Allen, a seasoned operator, consultant, author, and business speaker who help companies across the US build efficient and effective business process. After years in corporate America with organizations like ADT, Security System, and Houston Post, and Gyoko, Errol followed an inner calling to start his own consulting firm, helping business improve system and solve both employees and customer problem. It's really a pleasure having you on the show, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here with you today.
What was it like growing up?
I was still inner city kid, man, here in Houston, Texas, playing ball, was a daily thing, football, basketball, just having a lot of fun as a kid and going through school, enjoying school. School was always fun for me. I love to read. So, just the typical kid things, man, just inner city kid.
Amazing. So what inspired you to leave corporate America and step into the world of operating consulting?
Well, I just felt like there was more for me to do. There was an inner tug. My last corporate stop was Geico. I was there for 10 years, and around the 5th year, there was an inner tug, just kind of telling me there was more for me to do. So, that 10th year, I decided to leave so that I could do what I love to do, which is deal with processes.
Amazing. So you said that processes make the world go round. What does that mean
Yeah.
to you in a context of business success?
Everything is a process. And when your processes are efficient and effective meaning they're good for everybody involved, whether that's internally within a company and then externally for your paying customer, it can certainly help your business to be the best business possible. I feel like processes are everything, man. Everything is a process. From the time we get up in the morning, there's a getting up process. Most people get up with an alarm clock. The alarm goes off. That starts the process. That triggers the process for a lot of people. The alarm goes off. Then there's an immediate question: are you ready to get up? If you're ready to get up, you turn the alarm off. If you're not ready to get up, you put the alarm on snooze and wait for it to cycle back 5 minutes or so. So just even that is a process.
Wow, amazing. So true, because everything revolves around process. Even our schooling system is a process. And the process of buying, the process of doing business, the process of relationship, everything cut across process, and this just speaks volumes to it. So how did people around you react when you decide to walk away from a stable job to start consulting?
Oh man, people thought I had lost my mind. I had a great job, that paid me well. And I had a company car. My personal car sat in the garage most of the time. And so there was a lot of benefits to having that job. So people thought, man, are you crazy? I just followed my own heart, really is what I did.
Wow. Oh, that was really amazing. So what was the earlier difficulties when you actually more like started consulting on your own, compared to when you had more like a stable job and without you thinking about what the end of the month is going to be like?
I guess the most difficult thing was getting visibility for myself, as a consultant. Nobody knew
Yeah.
me. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew what I was capable of doing. So it was like, okay, how am I going to do that? And then putting it into motion because it was going to be key to me getting clients was, creating visibility for my skill set. So that was probably the most difficult thing to begin with was gaining visibility for myself.
Amazing. So what were some of the biggest lessons you learned earlier on why actually helping your first few clients? Just
What I was teaching, showing, helping my clients with, it works, right? I had to, you're always wondering, man, can I really do this? And then to see it actually start to help them, the things that I was suggesting, helping them to implement, that it actually, I always felt like it would work, but then learning the lesson to believe in oneself and one's skill set. That was one lesson I learned. And then another lesson I learned is just because a client may be a large company doesn't mean that one has to be intimidated by the size of the company.
mm,
Because size doesn't always mean that things run as well as they should. So don't be intimidated by the size of the company, and don't let the size of the company make you feel like, well, they're already doing well because they're big, when in reality, they may be big, but there's still a lot of opportunity for things to run better.
Yeah, so true. And I think it's very, very key being that sometimes you might have the skill sets to actually more like help a business, being that it's just more like your first time trying it out. There's definitely going to be a doubt on how you could actually more like turn a whole lot of those things around, especially as per the result depends on what process you're actually bringing in, and there's a whole lot. And it's very, very lovely that you're able to kind of overcome that. And yeah, it just speaks volumes to be an entrepreneur and you're reaching out to business. And even if bigger business reach out to you with their problem, that's the way you just advise. Don't be afraid of what their size of their company is. They have problem
Mhm.
and you have to solve it. Yeah, amazing. So how can better process help improve employees' morals and reduce turnover?
Well, most employees appreciate consistency, right? And when there's not consistency within the company, especially across departments, right? Where most processes flow across departments within a company. So if when I do my part in the process and it's going somewhere else, well, if the handoff to the next person or department or area is not a good one, then that's going to create some chaos for somebody within the company, because me completing my part of the process or my task within the process triggers somebody else to do their task within the process. And if what I provide is not given to them in the manner that they need, it doesn't contain what they need, then they're not able to start their part because things are missing. And that can certainly impact morale. But if things are good, if the handoffs are good and things can just keep going, then of course morale goes up. There's no internal chaos between departments. There's no resentment from one person to another because you never give me what I need so I can do what I need to do in performing my task. But when it exists, then now morale certainly can be on a higher level because everybody is getting what they need to do what they need to do. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, this is really, really amazing. So true. Because the reason why most times employees underperform is the fact that sometimes they don't even have clarity of what their job is. There is no consistency and they don't know at what point is their job description, where does it end, and what is more like the blueprint of it. And just the way you make reference of it, once there is process, it speaks volumes to or what they could do different, where they could innovate on, and what's yeah, it's really lovely, more like having process because it reduce confusion and boost their self esteem too, being that they know they're doing it according to the blueprint and according to what the rules is. So you work with companies across the US. What are the most common process problem you encounter?
Is first of all not having anything documented. Processes live in somebody's head. Yeah, that's one common thing that I see. There's no training or very little training. So to ensure that employees, first of all, know how to do what's expected of them is one thing to say, okay, here's your task. Is another thing to properly train someone on how to do the task. So sometimes that's missing, a good training experience for employees. That can certainly create a lot of turnover because most people want to feel good about coming to work and being able to do their job. If you don't train them well,
Yeah.
then they may not stay, especially young people. Young people will just walk away, even though they're gone until you don't see them anymore. So training is certainly important. And actually, that's one of my pet peeves is not training people properly and then having expectations that's unfair.
Yeah.
So, and another thing is including the people that actually do the work into the process creation or the process improvement. Sometimes managers, business owners, whoever, they want to control how things are done versus including the people that actually do the work. including them in creation or improving processes. Because when you do that, you have automatic buy-in. You don't have to try to push things or get buy-in. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. I need you guys to come on board with this, versus including them in the creation or the improvement. Not you have automatic buy-in. So those are some of the things that I see, within within some businesses.
Wow, wow. And I think this particular point you just make reference to speak volumes. So especially new entrepreneurs who just started with some numbers of clients, some numbers of employees on their rosters. Most times it's common for them to assume that, yeah, the employees ought to know what they ought to do, being that the rules is written on their head without any blueprint that they actually more like giving to the employees to work with, more like the process. The fact that you make reference of a whole lot of them does not document, they don't put down, just speak volume to this. And also, into a whole lot of things are coming into being. Job description is changing every now and then. So more training is needed to actually ensure process is actually more like being put in place. So in your experience, what roles should CEO or founders play in leading the push for process improvement?
Well, if the leaders or founders or executives that are higher up, if they don't lead the push to document processes, then it won't happen. It won't happen. There will always be something that will come up where it'll be said, well, we have to put this to the side until we can do this. So if leadership is not committed to documenting the processes or creating processes, then it won't happen. So it's required that they be committed to doing it for it to actually happen, because it's not something that you do in a month or even 6 months. It can take a while to go through all of your processes. So it's a tedious a tedious journey, right? I love it, but I know everybody's not me. But it's
Yeah.
very tedious. So there has to be some long-term commitment to getting it done. And it has to come from leadership.
Yeah. Yes. Amazing. Amazing. Thanks for that. So how do you help business owner who think documenting process we slow them down? Who actually more like think that documenting process will actually slow them down? How do you help them?
It will slow them down, but I get them to think long-term. What are the long-term benefits of documenting your processes, right? It will slow you down, because you're going to have to set aside some time to get it done. So you have to think long term. What are the long term benefits of documenting a process? You create consistency. Now you have training resources. How's it going to impact your employee morale? How's it going to impact the experience for your paying customer? What's going to be the impact? What does that do for your revenue? If you can positively impact your paying customer, what does that do for revenue? So I stress the benefits of taking this long-term journey and taking the time and committing some time to doing what's necessary to document your process.
Amazing. Thanks for that, Hero. So, what's one example of a process you help redesign that have major impacts on business performance?
Well, in one particular client, there was an issue between sales and operations, particularly onboarding new clients. And the person who was responsible for onboarding new clients, she never got all of the information that she needed to properly onboard a new client, right? So it was an instant bottleneck. As soon as she received information from sales department and would check to see if she had all of the required information, I asked her, what percentage of the time do you have what you need to onboard a new client? What percentage of the time do you get what you need? She said, never. And I said, okay, so, and she said, never. And I said, okay, so now that's an instant bottleneck, because everything stops, because you need to get all of the information so you can onboard this client. So we had to let the sales department know the importance of getting her what she needed in order for the process to be as smooth as possible, onboarding the new management client, because it took longer, because either she would go back to them and say, hey, you didn't give me this, or she would call that brand new client asking for the information. Both of them really made no sense. So it just
Yeah.
became leadership's responsibility to stress to the salespeople. You need to make sure, and we created a checklist. You need to make sure you give her all of this information so that she can properly and in a timely manner onboard a brand new client, because they couldn't get any revenue from this brand new client until the client was onboarded in their system. So that was a major one for that business, because nothing was happening until the new client was on board.
Yeah, wow, that was really profound. Is the fact that there is nothing that the business could actually do, being that if there is no onboarding of new clients, and the process was not that very clear, especially for the persons managing it, and just redesigning it speak volumes to how many more like our clients they get to put on board every now and then, other than the uncertainties that come with what's supposed to be done, even the kind of disease rep does not even understand. So how
Right.
can small business start thinking like a larger organizations when it comes to structure and efficiency?
Well, really, in my mind, small businesses should not think like large businesses, because a lot of large businesses, their processes are not as good as they could be, right? They're just a large business. Right. The large business could be filled with chaos because of processes not being the best they can be. What I do tell small businesses is to make sure you are creating efficient and effective processes, and do it early, because your goal is to grow the business. Don't wait until the business starts to grow before you document your process. Go ahead and do it early so that you have things in place. Now, when you start to grow, you have to revisit your processes, right? And tweak them. Get started as soon as possible, and don't try to be like big business, right? There's no need to, because just because a business is big doesn't mean it runs.
Amazing, amazing. Thanks for that. It really just speak volumes too. Once process is being documented as a small business, it's easier to revisit it when it becomes big business compared to not taking stock of what the process should be as a small business. Yeah, it's really key, and thank you for that. So when should a company consider automating part of its processes, and when should it remain manual?
When you start to grow, or when you see opportunities to make things run faster, or run quicker, the key to automation is picking the right tool for your situation. But that can be started as early as possible. Automation works great, is just don't automate a bad process, right? So look at what parts of the process would lean to being automated, but you can start that as early as possible, right? I mean, as soon as you start the business, you can be looking at what part of what can we automate? Which of our processes can we automate, or what part of the process can we automate? You can start that
Yeah.
right off the bat, really.
Amazing, amazing. So, what advice do you give to leader facing employee resistance during process change?
Well, ask why the resistance, to hear from them, to allow them to speak, right?
Yeah.
What, why are you resisting this change in the process, or any change? Really? Why are you resisting? Just to hear them out, because a lot of times is fear based.
Yeah.
It's fear based. They want to protect their area, or their things that they are responsible for. They may feel like, well, if we improve this or change this, then you're not going to need me, right? Well, that may not necessarily be true. Most of the time, it's not true. But that fear creates that resistance. That's one example. And then a lot of times, you have people that just don't want to change, and change is necessary. And if that's the case, then you have to let them know, hey, we're going to do what's best for the team, not what's best for an individual. And then they decide whether or not they want to be on the team.
Amazing, amazing. And I think this kind of talk is really amazing, being that you have to hear from both parts, hear especially from the employees to actually more like know why they are resisting the change, being that they are going to be at the end of the day executing those processes. And it's really amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
So how often should a company review or refresh its process to stay efficient?
Here's what I say. I encourage businesses to have team meetings on a regular basis, right? Have team meetings. I have clients, they have team meetings once a week. You know, teams get together, cross functional teams get together, and talk about what's going on in the business. They talk about their area of responsibility. That's a prime opportunity for leadership to ask, are your processes still working for you? Right? That's a prime time to ask. You have your people together, so go ahead and ask. Are your processes still working for you? What you hear most people say is, revisit your processes every 6 months, and that's a good time frame to do it every 6 months. But I'm like, why wait? If you're having cross-functional meetings, go ahead and ask then, are your processes still working for you? Because a lot of times you can fix something right away versus waiting to revisit the processes. So I say ask that question on a regular basis, are your processes still working for you?
Wow. Wow. So if you could give a piece of advice to young entrepreneurs about building scalable business, what will it be?
What tools will you need to scale that business? And documented processes is one key tool to scaling, right? Because especially if you're going to have multiple locations, and you want that consistency across locations, right? So if you have your processes documented, that's one way of ensuring that things are being done the same way at every location. If scaling to you means we're just going to grow the business. Well, as the business grows, if you have documented processes, it probably means you're going to hire more people. Then your documented processes allow you to train those people. So it's critical to have that tool in place. How do we do what it is we do? It is critical to have that ability to train people well and to ensure consistency as you grow, whether that be in one location or multiple locations, because the goal, one of the keys to business success is consistency. And if you can create consistency within your business, then you can create consistency for your paying customer. To me, the key to scaling is having documented process. So take the time to document your processes, and that'll help you to be able to scale. You don't want to scale and create more chaos. Right. You want to scale where there's not unnecessary chaos. Growing brings about how can I say it? Growing brings about a little chaos in and of itself. Temporary chaos, right? You don't want to have you don't want chaos to be an everyday thing within your business.
Yeah.
If your employees say, "Well, that's just the way it is here. It's just chaotic all the time." To me, that's like a big red flag. So as you grow, you want to make sure you grow in scale. You want to make sure you're not creating unnecessary chaos when you do that.
Wow, amazing. And I think this is very key, especially when you make reference of consistency. If more like every process could be documented as a business before scaling, yeah, because definitely scaling actually amplify any chaos that is not being resolved, any process that is not be getting right. It amplifies it and make it more demanding to even handle compared to if a business is already more like have a process that is working consistently over time. It's easier to scale and keep scaling without losing its values and everything that is being needed compared to more like if there's a problem and you scale with it, it's going to be more problem in that. So it's going to more like even amplifies it and lead to a bigger problem because scaling it more like you're opening more. The bandwidth is now increased, the possibility is now increased, and the possibility of those errors increase alongside if there is no consistency in terms of process, in terms of documentation, and in terms of onboarding clients and even yeah, it's really amazing. Thanks for that. So yeah, tell us a bit about your book and how come our audience more like reach out to you and do business with you.
My book, Achieve Connectivity Now, came out earlier well, no, last month, September. And it's just a simple book that talks about things to do within your business to keep things from falling through the cracks, creating core values. What are our core values as a company? How will the company treat the employees? How will the employees treat each other? How will everybody treat the customer? Creating role descriptions. Just for example, role descriptions. What are the tasks for each role? When you create the role description, you've also created the training outline for that particular role. We're hiring you for this role. Here are the tasks you're responsible for. Here's what we need to make sure you know how to do it. Developing performance standards, creating your processes, developing key performance indicators, on and on and on and on. Just simple principles. And there's exercises in the book too. At the end of each chapter, there's an exercise for readers to do so that you read and you do the exercise so you can implement. So the book is like 100 pages, I believe it is. It's not a big book, but there's some key principles and then there's some exercises for implementation. It's available on lulu.com, or you can go to my website, ErrolAllenConsulting.com and get it from there. That's a good way to reach me. Just go on my website or you can email me at ErrolAllenConsulting.com and I'll certainly reply same day. Those are
Wow.
the two best. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing your stories and insight with us today. Your journey reminds us that real growth often starts with structure, and that's improving how we work and can change everything about what we can achieve. For those listening, you can connect with Errol or even schedule a
That's good.
consulting through the link in the show notes to learn how to make your business process stronger and smarter. The next time, keep building, improving, and leading with intention right here on the Aro Benaiah Show. Once again, it's really a pleasure having you. Aro.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure
Yeah,
being here with you. Yeah.
yeah.